The blood on Vincent Zarrow's hands had long dried when he noticed the orc girl swaying in the doorway of his barn, her green skin pale as spring grass in moonlight, and her eyes glassy with exhaustion. He had been a soldier once, had spent 5 years on the northern frontier fighting orc raiders, and every instinct in his body screamed at him to reach for the sword he no longer carried. But this orc was different. She was small for her kind, barely taller than his shoulder, with delicate tusks that curved upward from her lower lip like ivory crescents. She wore leather armor that had seen better days, patched in a dozen places, and her dark hair hung in a thick braid down her back. What stopped him from shouting or running was the look in her amber eyes, not hostility, not hunger, just bone-deep weariness. "I mean no harm," she said in accented but clear human tongue, her voice rough as gravel. "I will leave at first light. I only need shelter for a few hours." Vincent's farmhouse stood at the edge of the thornwood, 3 days' ride from the nearest town. He had bought the land cheap, because no one else wanted to live so close to orc territory. He had thought himself brave or perhaps foolish when he signed the deed, a discharged veteran trying to build something with his hands instead of destroying it. Now, 6 months into his new life, he faced his first real test. "You are wounded," he said, noticing the dark stain on her side, barely visible against the worn leather. She glanced down as if surprised to find blood there. "It is nothing. A scrape from a wolf pack 2 nights ago." 2 nights, Vincent frowned. "You have been traveling for 2 days with that wound." 4 days, she corrected quietly. "I have been traveling for 4 days. Something in the way she said it made Vincent's chest tighten. 4 days was a long time to be on the road, especially through the thornwood where wolves hunted in packs of 20 and worse things prowled after dark. He made a decision that would have horrified his former commanding officer. "Come inside," he said, stepping back from the barn door. "Let me see that wound properly." The orc girl hesitated, her eyes darting past him to the darkness beyond the barn. "I should not. If anyone learns I was here, they will burn your farm." "Let me worry about that. Come on." He gestured more insistently. She moved like a woman walking underwater, each step requiring visible effort. Up close, Vincent could see the tremor in her hands, the way she blinked too slowly. He had seen soldiers in this state before, men pushed past the edge of endurance who kept moving through sheer will. He led her not to the house but to the barn where he kept his medical supplies. Old habits died hard, and he still maintained a field kit even though his fighting days were behind him. "Sit," he commanded, pointing to a hay bale. She obeyed without argument, which worried him more than anything else. An orc in fighting shape would have bristled at orders from a human. She lowered herself onto the hay with a barely suppressed groan, her hand pressed to her side. Vincent lit a lantern and brought it close. "Show me." She unlaced her armor with fumbling fingers, pulling aside the leather and the rough sponge shirt beneath to reveal a gash along her ribs. It was not deep enough to be fatal, but it was infected, the edges red and angry. Vincent fetched water and clean cloth, along with the jar of salve he made from herbs that grew wild near the creek. "This will hurt," he warned. "Everything hurts already," she replied with a ghost of a smile. "Do what you must." He cleaned the wound as gently as he could, feeling her flinch beneath his hands but hearing not a sound of complaint. The orc girl kept her eyes fixed on the barn wall, her jaw clenched tight. When he applied the salve, she finally hissed through her teeth. "Sorry," Vincent muttered. "You are being kind. I did not expect kindness from a human." Her voice held no bitterness, only tired statement of fact. "I am just being practical. If you die in my barn, it will be terrible for the smell." He meant it as a joke, but it came out flat. She surprised him with a quiet laugh. Practical. Yes, I understand practical. He bandaged her ribs with clean linen, wrapping it tight enough to hold but not so tight she could not breathe. His hands were steady despite the strangeness of the situation. A year ago, he would have been trying to put a blade in her. Now he was patching her up like she was one of his own. "What is your name?" he asked as he tied off the bandage. She was silent so long he thought she would not answer. Then, quietly, "Grasha." "Vincent," he offered in return. "Vincent Zarrow, this is my farm such as it is." "Why do you live so far from other humans, Vincent Zarrow?" He sat back on his heels, considering how much to tell her. "I wanted somewhere quiet, somewhere I could work with my hands and not think about the war. You were a soldier. It was not a question. How did you know your movements? The way you positioned yourself between me and the door even while helping me. The scars on your forearms," she gestured weakly. "I know soldiers. You have fought against my people." Again, not a question. "I have fought to protect my people," she corrected. "There is a difference." Vincent could not argue with that. He stood and poured water into a cup, offering it to her. She drank deeply, emptying the cup in 3 long swallows. He refilled it twice more before she was satisfied. "When did you last sleep?" he asked. Grasha looked away. 4 days ago. Before I left my clan's territory." 4 days, Vincent stared at her. "You have not slept in 4 days. I could not risk it. The thornwood is dangerous and I had to stay alert." She swayed slightly even as she spoke, her eyes struggling to focus. "You are going to collapse if you do not rest soon." "I will rest when I reach the southern settlements. I cannot stay here. It is not safe for you. You just said the thornwood is dangerous. You think I am going to let you stumble back out there in your condition? You would be dead before sunrise." "Why do you care?" The question came out sharper than perhaps she intended. "I am an orc. We are enemies." "We were enemies," Vincent said carefully. "I left that life behind, and even if I had not, I would not send a wounded person out to die. That is not who I am." Grasha studied him with those amber eyes, searching for deception or hidden motive. Whatever she saw seemed to satisfy her because her shoulders slumped in defeat. "Just for a few hours," she whispered. "Then I will go. Sleep as long as you need. I will keep watch." "You do not need to do that." "Yes, I do. Because you have been watching for danger for 4 days straight, and someone needs to take a turn." Something in her expression crumbled at that, a wall coming down that she had held in place through sheer force of will. She blinked rapidly, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "I am very tired," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "I know. Come on." Vincent helped her to her feet and guided her to a corner of the barn where he stored extra hay for winter. He spread out a wool blanket he kept for cold nights and helped her lie down. She was asleep before her head touched the makeshift pillow, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion. Vincent settled himself near the barn door with his back against the wall where he could watch both Grasha and the entrance. He had spoken truth when he said he would keep watch. The thornwood came alive at night with all manner of dangers, and an injured orc would draw predators like blood in water. He was surprised to find he genuinely cared whether she survived the night. The hours passed slowly. Vincent listened to the sounds of the forest, identifying each call and rustle through years of training. An owl hunted somewhere to the west. A fox barked in the distance. Normal sounds, nothing that suggested threat. He checked on Grasha twice, confirming that she still breathed, and that fever had not taken hold of her wound. Both times she remained deeply asleep, her face peaceful in a way that made her look younger than he had first assumed. He guessed she could not be much past 20 winters, barely old enough to be considered an adult by orc standards. Dawn came with pale gold light filtering through the cracks in the barn walls. Vincent's back ached from sitting against the rough wood all night, but he felt oddly content. He had kept his word. He had kept watch while someone who desperately needed rest was able to sleep safely. It was a small thing, but it felt important in a way he could not quite name. Grasha woke with a start as the rooster crowed, her hand instinctively reaching for a weapon that was not there. She blinked in confusion, taking in her surroundings with obvious disorientation. Then her eyes found Vincent and memory returned. "You stayed," she said, wonder in her voice. "I said I would keep watch, but I am an orc. And I am a man of my word. How do you feel?" Grasha took inventory of herself, touching her bandaged ribs gingerly. "Better. The pain is less and my head is clearer." She sat up slowly, testing her body's response. "You gave me a great gift. I will not forget this kindness. It was nothing. It was everything." She met his eyes squarely. "No human has ever shown me kindness before, only suspicion and hate." Vincent felt uncomfortable under the weight of her gratitude. "You said you were traveling to the southern settlements. Why?" The shutters came down behind her eyes, her expression closing off. "That is my business." "Fair enough. Are you hungry? I was about to make breakfast." She looked startled by the offer. "You would share your food with me." "Well, I did patch you up. Seems a waste to let you starve now." He pushed to his feet, joints cracking. "Come on. I make decent porridge and I have eggs from the chickens." Grasha followed him from the barn to the farmhouse, moving stiffly but under her own power. Vincent's home was small, just 2 rooms and a loft, but it was sturdily built and well maintained. He had made most of the furniture himself, teaching himself carpentry through trial and considerable error. The result was functional if not beautiful. He set about preparing breakfast while Grasha stood awkwardly near the door, clearly uncertain of her welcome despite his invitation. Vincent gestured to the table. "Sit before you fall over." She obeyed, lowering herself into a chair with visible relief. Vincent noticed her examining everything with keen interest. The neat stack of firewood by the hearth, the herbs hanging from the rafters to dry, the bookshelf he had built to hold the dozen volumes he owned. Her gaze lingered on the books. "You read?" she asked. "Some." "I am not educated, but I can manage well enough." "Do you read?" "My mother taught me when I was young. She said knowledge was a weapon sharper than any blade." Grasha's voice softened with memory. "She learned from a human trader who came to our territory when she was a girl, before the wars grew bitter." Vincent stirred the porridge, adding a handful of dried berries and a pinch of salt. "What happened to your mother?" "She died 3 years ago. Sickness took her during a hard winter." Grasha traced a pattern on the wooden table with one thick finger. "She made me promise I would not waste the learning she gave me, that I would use it to build bridges instead of burning them." Sounds like she was wise. She was. The clan elders thought her foolish for believing humans and orcs could coexist peacefully. Events have proven them right more often than not. Vincent served the porridge in wooden bowls, setting one before Grasha along with a spoon. He fried eggs in his iron skillet, the smell filling the small house with homey warmth. When he added the eggs to their bowls, Grasha stared at the food as if it might vanish. "Eat," Vincent said gently. "You need your strength." She ate with careful precision, as if afraid to appear greedy despite her obvious hunger. Vincent ate his own breakfast more quickly, years of military life having taught him to fuel his body efficiently rather than savor his meals. He watched Grasha from the corner of his eye, noting the way she closed her eyes briefly at the first taste, the almost imperceptible relaxation of her shoulders as food filled her empty stomach. "This is good," she said when the bowl was half empty. "Thank you. You are welcome. Do you want more?" "I should not take more of your supplies. I have plenty." The chickens are laying well and I have 2 milk cows. I will not starve because I shared a meal." He refilled her bowl without waiting for permission. Grasha accepted the second helping with a nod of gratitude. They ate in comfortable silence, the morning sun streaming through the window and painting everything gold. It felt almost normal, Vincent thought, like sharing breakfast with a friend rather than entertaining an orc stranger in his kitchen. The thought should have troubled him, but it did not. When they finished eating, Grasha stood to help clear the dishes. Vincent started to protest, but saw the set of her jaw and thought better of it. She needed to feel useful, to give something back even in this small way. They worked together to clean up, falling into an easy rhythm despite being strangers. "I should go," Grasha said when the last dish was dried and put away. "I have taken enough of your hospitality. Your wound needs more time to heal. It will have to heal on the road." "I cannot stay, Vincent Zarrow. Every moment I remain here puts you in danger." "Danger from what? Who is looking for you?" She hesitated, clearly weighing how much to reveal. "My clan's war chief. I refused a command and he does not tolerate disobedience." "What command?" Vincent asked quietly. "He ordered a raid on a human village. Women and children mostly, with the men away at the spring planting in the eastern fields. Easy targets." Her hands clenched into fists. "I told him I would not make war on the helpless. He called me a coward and a traitor, so I left." Vincent absorbed this, understanding flooding through him. "You are an exile." "Yes. My only hope is to reach the southern territories where clan law does not extend. There are mixed settlements there, or so I have heard, places where humans and orcs live in uneasy peace. Perhaps I can find a place among them. The southern territories are 2 weeks' travel from here, maybe more given your injury, I know, but I have no choice." Vincent made a decision that would change both their lives, though he could not know it then. "Stay here. At least until you are healed enough to travel safely." "I told you I cannot. If the war chief's hunters find me here, then we will deal with them together. I am not helpless, Grasha. I can defend my own land. You would risk yourself for an orc you met last night." "I would risk myself for someone who chose mercy over cruelty, someone brave enough to leave everything behind rather than compromise their principles. That is worth defending." Grasha stared at him as if he had grown a second head. "You are a strange human, Vincent Zarrow. So I have been told." "Will you stay?" She should have said no. Every instinct of self-preservation demanded she refuse, that she not drag this kind human into her troubles. But she was so tired, and the thought of stumbling through the thornwood for another 2 weeks with her wound barely closed was almost unbearable. And there was something in Vincent's eyes, a steadiness that called to something deep inside her. 3 days, she said finally. "I will stay 3 days to let the wound close properly. Then I must go. Fair enough. 3 days." Vincent offered his hand in the human custom of sealing agreements. Grasha looked at his outstretched hand for a long moment before clasping it with her own. Her grip was strong despite her exhaustion, her palm calloused from years of weapon work. They shook once formally, and Vincent felt the strangest sensation that he had just made the most important decision of his life. The first day passed in quiet companionship. Vincent tended his fields while Grasha rested in the barn, insisting she felt more comfortable there than in the house. He checked on her regularly, bringing water and food, changing her bandage in the evening. The wound looked better, the infection clearing thanks to his herbal salve. She would have a scar, but she would heal. That night, Vincent again kept watch while Grasha slept. She protested that he needed rest too, but he waved away her concerns. He was used to interrupted sleep from his army days, and he could catch a few hours during the day while working the farm. Grasha was the one who had pushed her body to the breaking point and needed deep, healing rest. The second day brought unexpected visitors. Vincent was splitting firewood behind the house when he heard horses approaching. He set down his axe and walked to the front of the property, shading his eyes against the midday sun. 3 riders approached, and his stomach sank when he recognized the lead man. Garrett Stone, a farmer from the nearest town who fancied himself a leader of men. Beside him rode his 2 sons, both young men with more bluster than sense. "Zarrow," Garrett called out as they reined in their horses. "We need to talk." "About what?" Vincent kept his voice neutral, aware that Grasha was in the barn only 50 feet away. "There have been orc sightings in the Thornwood. Travelers on the northern road reported seeing one heading this direction 3 days ago. We are checking all the outlying farms, warning people to keep watch." "I appreciate the concern," Vincent said carefully, "but I have seen nothing unusual. Mind if we look around, just to be sure?" Every muscle in Vincent's body tensed. "I do mind, actually. This is my land, and I do not take kindly to people poking around without cause." Garrett's eyes narrowed. "That is suspicious talk, Zarrow. Makes a man wonder what you might be hiding." "I am hiding nothing. I am simply a private man who values his property rights. You have no authority to search my land without evidence of wrongdoing. An orc in the area is evidence enough for me. 1 orc among thousands of acres of forest. You going to search every farm, every barn, every root cellar in the territory? That orc could be anywhere by now, probably long gone south or back to clan lands." Garrett considered this. His weathered face creased with frustration. He was not a bad man, Vincent knew, just one who had lost people to orc raids and saw threats everywhere as a result. His youngest daughter had died in a skirmish 5 years back, and the grief had hardened him. "Maybe you are right," Garrett admitted grudgingly. "But keep your eyes open, Zarrow, and if you see anything, you come tell us straight away. Understood? Understood. I will keep watch." The 3 men turned their horses and rode back the way they had come. Vincent waited until they were well out of sight before releasing the breath he had been holding. That had been close, far too close. He walked quickly to the barn and found Grasha pressed against the wall beside the door, a pitchfork gripped in her hands like a weapon. "They are gone," he said quietly, "but we need to be more careful. The humans in this area are looking for you." "I heard what that man said. His daughter died in an orc raid." Grasha set down the pitchfork, her hands shaking slightly. "He has every right to hate my kind. Grief gives him reasons, not rights, but it makes him dangerous." Vincent ran a hand through his hair. "Maybe you should hide in the root cellar during the day, just in case someone comes back. Or maybe I should leave tonight before I bring more trouble to your door. No. You agreed to 3 days, and your wound is not healed enough. Another day at least. Vincent, I know the risks, Grasha. I am choosing to take them. Let me make my own decisions about my own life." She looked at him with an expression he could not quite read, something between frustration and wonder. "You are the stubbornest human I have ever met." "I will take that as a compliment. Come on, let me check that wound." All the excitement probably did not do it any good. He rebandaged her ribs, noting with satisfaction that the healing continued well. The angry redness had faded to pink, and fresh skin was knitting across the gash. Another 2 days and she would be fit to travel, though he found himself reluctant to see her go. Her presence had brought something unexpected to his lonely farm, a sense of purpose beyond the daily routine of crops and animals. That evening, Vincent made a hearty stew with vegetables from his garden and salt pork from his stores. They ate together in the barn this time, Vincent reasoning that it was safer than having smoke from the chimney draw attention. Grasha complimented his cooking, and they fell into conversation more easily than before. "Why did you leave the army?" Grasha asked, sopping up the last of her stew with a piece of bread. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. "I killed a lot of orcs during my service. Did what I was told, followed orders, never questioned whether the people I was fighting were truly my enemies or just people caught up in the same cycles of violence as me. Then one day we raided an orc camp, and I found myself standing over a young orc warrior I had just struck down. He was maybe 18, barely old enough to grow a full beard by human standards, and as he died, he cried out for his mother. Vincent stared into his bowl, seeing not stew but memories. Something broke in me that day. I realized I had been killing people, not monsters. People with families and hopes and fears just like mine. I finished my term of service and swore I would never pick up a sword in anger again. I wanted to build things instead of destroying them, to make something grow instead of watching things die." Grasha listened in silence, her amber eyes reflecting the lamplight. When he finished, she reached across the small space between them and placed her hand over his. The gesture was tentative, unsure, but filled with understanding. "Your mother would be proud of who you have become," Vincent said, turning his hand to clasp hers properly. "I hope so. Some days I am not sure I made the right choice. Leaving my clan means abandoning my people, everyone I have ever known. What if they needed me and I was not there? What if staying meant becoming someone you could not live with? Some choices are about survival, but others are about the kind of person we want to be. You chose to be someone who does not make war on the helpless. That took more courage than any battle. You make it sound noble. Mostly I feel like a coward running away. Running toward something better is not the same as running away from a fight. You are running toward a chance to live according to your principles. That is brave." Grasha squeezed his hand once before letting go, but the warmth of her touch lingered. "You have a way with words, Vincent Zarrow. I read a lot during the winter. Books are good company when the snow is too deep to go anywhere. What do you read? Histories, mostly. Some poetry, though I do not always understand it. Agricultural manuals. Whatever I can get from the traveling merchants who pass through in autumn." "I would like to read again," Grasha said wistfully. "I have not held a book since I left my mother's hut. You can read any of mine if you like. I am not precious about them." Her face lit up with genuine delight. "Truly? You would let me, of course. Come on, we can go to the house now that it is dark. Less chance of being seen." They walked together through the cool evening air, the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. Vincent pointed out constellations he knew, and Grasha shared the orc names for the same patterns of lights. The warrior that humans saw was the hunter to orcs. The great bear was the Earth Mother. Different peoples, different stories, but the same sky above them all. Inside the house, Vincent lit lamps and showed Grasha his modest collection of books. She ran her fingers reverently over the spines, reading the titles aloud. She selected a volume of collected folk tales from various human kingdoms and settled into a chair by the fire, immediately absorbed in the pages. Vincent busied himself with small tasks, mending a shirt, sharpening his knife, feeding the fire. But mostly he watched Grasha read, noting the way her lips moved silently over unfamiliar words, how her brow furrowed in concentration, the small smile that appeared when she found something particularly pleasing. She looked peaceful, he thought. Content in a way she had not since arriving. The night deepened around them. Vincent knew he should suggest they sleep, but he was reluctant to break the spell of the moment. Eventually, Grasha looked up from her book with reluctance. "I should let you rest," she said. "You have been working all day. I am not tired yet." "Keep reading if you want." "Are you certain? I know I am keeping you from your bed." "Positive. It is nice to have someone to share the evening with. Gets lonely out here sometimes." "You miss the army. The companionship of other soldiers, Vincent considered the question. I miss the bonds formed through shared hardship. There is a brotherhood in arms that is hard to replicate in civilian life, but I do not miss the killing or the constant threat of death. This is better, even if it is quieter. I understand. I miss my clan sisters, the women I trained with. We were like family, but I could not stay and compromise who I am. Maybe you will find new sisters in the South, new family. Maybe, Grasha did not sound convinced, or maybe I will be alone, neither orc nor human, accepted by neither people. You will always be orc, Grasha. Nothing can change that, but perhaps you can be an orc who builds bridges, like your mother wanted. She smiled at him then, a real smile that showed her tusks and crinkled the corners of her eyes. You are wise for a human farmer. Former soldier, current farmer, occasional philosopher. I contain multitudes. She laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Vincent felt something shift in his chest, a recognition he was not quite ready to name. He busied himself stoking the fire, avoiding the realization that was creeping up on him despite his best efforts to ignore it. They stayed up late into the night, talking and reading and simply existing together in comfortable companionship. When they finally did seek sleep, Vincent insisting Grasha take the bed while he made a pallet by the fire, both of them knew that something had changed between them. The careful distance of strangers had evolved into something more fragile and more precious. The third day dawned cloudy and cool, promising rain before evening. Vincent woke before Grasha and started breakfast, moving quietly to let her sleep. She emerged from the bedroom as he was frying eggs, her hair loose around her shoulders for once instead of in its usual braid. She looked softer this way, younger and less guarded. "Good morning," she said, her voice still rough with sleep. "Morning. How is the wound?" "Much better." "I think your salve is magic. Just herbs and patience. Sit down, breakfast is almost ready." They ate together at the table, morning light filtering through the windows in pale streams. Grasha had regained much of her strength, Vincent noted. Color had returned to her green skin, and the tremor in her hands was gone. She would be ready to travel soon, probably tomorrow if she chose to leave. The thought filled him with unexpected dismay. 3 days ago he had been living alone, content in his solitude. Now the prospect of returning to that loneliness felt unbearable. He had gotten used to her presence, to having someone to talk with and share meals with. More than that, he realized he genuinely liked her. Grasha was smart and brave and surprisingly funny when she let her guard down. She challenged him and made him think about things he had never considered. "What is wrong?" Grasha asked, watching him with concern. "You look troubled." "Just thinking," Vincent said, not ready to voice his thoughts. "The weather looks like it is turning. We might get a storm." "I should leave before it hits. Travel will be harder in the rain. Or you could wait until it passes. No sense making yourself miserable." "Vincent, I have already stayed longer than I should. Your kindness has been extraordinary, but I cannot abuse it further." "It is not abuse if I am offering freely. You know what I mean. The longer I stay, the greater the risk to you if I am discovered." "What if I do not care about the risk?" Grasha set down her fork, studying him intently. "Why are you trying so hard to make me stay? You do not owe me anything." "You have already given far more than anyone could expect." Vincent struggled to find the right words. "I like having you here. The farm feels less empty with you in it. Is that so wrong?" "No, but it is dangerous. For both of us, but especially for you. If your neighbors learn you harbored an orc, they will turn on you. You will lose everything you have built here. Maybe some things are worth the risk." "Vincent." She trailed off, clearly at a loss for words. Before he could press the point, a sound from outside froze them both. Horses, multiple riders approaching fast. Vincent was on his feet instantly, moving to the window. His blood ran cold when he saw 5 orcs on horseback riding up to his house, all armed and armored for war. At their head rode a massive orc warrior with scars crisscrossing his face and arms, his expression thunderous. "The war chief," Grasha whispered, her face draining of color. "He found me." Vincent's mind raced through options, all of them bad. 5 armed orc warriors against 1 discharged soldier and an injured orc woman. The math was not in their favor, but he would be damned if he would hand Grasha over without a fight. "Get to the root cellar," he said urgently. "Hide there and do not come out no matter what you hear." "No. I will not let you face them alone. This is my fight." "Grasha, I am done running, Vincent. If he wants to punish me for disobedience, let him face me directly instead of terrorizing an innocent human." The determination in her eyes told him argument was useless. Together they walked outside to face the war chief and his warriors. The orcs dismounted, weapons in hand, their expressions radiating menace. The war chief stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Grasha with fury and disgust. "So here you are, little traitor," he rumbled in the orc tongue, which Vincent understood from his military days. "Hiding behind a human like the coward you are." "I am not hiding, Thrak," Grasha replied in the same language, her voice steady despite her obvious fear. "I left the clan because I would not follow your orders to slaughter innocents. You left because you are weak, soft. You dishonor your mother's memory with your weakness. My mother taught me to think for myself, to choose my own path. You dishonor her by invoking her name." Thrak backhanded Grasha across the face with casual brutality, sending her sprawling in the dirt. Vincent moved without thought, placing himself between the war chief and Grasha, his hands raised peacefully but his stance making clear he would not move. "This is my land," he said in rough but comprehensible Orcish. "You have no right to attack anyone here." Thrak's eyes widened slightly in surprise that a human spoke his language. Then he laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "You think to give me orders, human? I could kill you where you stand." "You could try. But I was a soldier on the northern frontier for 5 years. I have killed more orcs than you have warriors with you. I would rather not add to that count, but I will defend what is mine." "She is not yours. She is a daughter of the Stone Fang clan, subject to our laws." "She left your clan. She is an exile by your own customs, which means she is no longer subject to your authority." Vincent held the war chief's gaze, refusing to show fear. "Leave my land. There is nothing for you here." Behind him, Grasha climbed to her feet, blood trickling from her split lip. She moved to stand beside Vincent rather than behind him, presenting a united front. Thrak's expression darkened further. "You shame yourself, Grasha," he said, switching back to Orcish. "Taking up with a human, hiding behind him like a frightened child. If your mother could see you now, she would weep." "My mother would be proud I chose compassion over cruelty," Grasha shot back. "Something you have never understood. Compassion is weakness. The humans will never accept you, never see you as anything but a monster. This one uses you for his own purposes, nothing more." "You are wrong." Grasha's voice rang with conviction. "Vincent Zarrow is a better person than you could ever hope to be. He showed me kindness when he had every reason to kill me or turn me away. He asked nothing in return, only that I let him help me heal. That is strength, Thrak, true strength, not the kind that comes from beating those weaker than yourself." The warriors behind Thrak shifted uneasily, exchanging glances. Vincent recognized the signs of uncertainty in the ranks. Good. That he could use. "Your war chief leads you to attack an unarmed woman and a farmer on his own land," Vincent said, addressing the warriors directly in their language. "Is this the honor of the Stone Fang clan?" Is this the bravery you take pride in? Silence, human, Thrak roared. You know nothing of orc honor. I know that honor means facing your enemies in fair combat, not hunting down exiles who pose no threat to anyone. Grasha left peacefully. She asked only to go her own way. What honor is there in pursuing her? She disobeyed a direct command from her war chief. That cannot stand. She refused to murder children. If that is disobedience in your clan, then perhaps your clan has lost its way. Thrak's face contorted with rage. He raised his massive war axe, preparing to strike Vincent down where he stood. But before he could bring the weapon down, Grasha stepped fully in front of Vincent, spreading her arms wide. If you want to kill him, you will have to kill me first, she declared. I challenge you, Thrak, by the old laws, by the right of combat. You and me, no weapons, until one of us yields or dies. The warriors gasped. Even Thrak looked taken aback. The challenge was ancient, binding, and apparently still held power because the war chief lowered his axe with visible effort. You cannot win, girl. I have twice your size and 3 times your experience. Maybe, but I am faster and I am fighting for something worth dying for. Can you say the same? Thrak considered her words, his expression calculating. You truly wish to throw your life away for this human. I wish to live my life according to my principles. If that means fighting you, so be it. Grasha, no, Vincent protested, but she silenced him with a look. This is my choice, Vincent, my fight. Let me do this. The war chief handed his axe to one of his warriors and stripped off his armor, revealing a torso crisscrossed with battle scars. Grasha did the same, wincing as she pulled her shirt over her head, Vincent's bandage still wrapped around her ribs. She was at a severe disadvantage, wounded and smaller than her opponent, but her eyes blazed with determination. The combatants faced each other while the warriors formed a circle, creating a makeshift arena. Vincent wanted to intervene, to stop this madness, but he understood that Grasha needed to do this. She needed to stand up to her former war chief, to prove to herself and everyone watching that she was not weak. Thrak attacked first, a thundering rush meant to overwhelm Grasha with brute force. She sidestepped at the last instant, using his momentum against him to send him stumbling past. She landed a sharp kick to his knee, making him roar in pain and anger. He recovered quickly, spinning to grab her, but she was already gone, dancing back out of reach. Stand and fight, coward. Thrak bellowed. I am fighting smart, which you never learned how to do, Grasha replied, circling him warily. He charged again, and this time she was not quite fast enough. His meaty fist caught her shoulder, spinning her around and sending her to the ground. Thrak pressed his advantage, dropping his weight on her, trying to pin her down. Grasha twisted desperately, using techniques Vincent recognized from his own training, and managed to squirm free. She rolled to her feet, breathing hard, her injured side clearly paining her. The fight continued, brutal and exhausting. Thrak landed heavy blows that Grasha could not entirely avoid. She struck back with speed and precision, targeting vulnerable spots: eyes, throat, joints. Neither fighter gave quarter, both driven by more than just physical contest. This was about principles, about the right to choose one's own path, about the kind of person each wanted to be. Vincent watched with his heart in his throat, flinching at every blow Grasha took. She was tiring faster than Thrak, her injury sapping her endurance. The war chief recognized this and shifted tactics, trying to grapple her into submission rather than striking. If he got a solid hold, she would be finished. Grasha seemed to understand this too. She stopped retreating and went on the offensive, launching a furious combination of strikes at Thrak's head and torso. He blocked most of them, but a few got through, bloodying his nose and cracking at least one rib. He roared and grabbed for her, and she let him catch her, using the momentum to flip him over her hip in a textbook throw that Vincent had seen 100 times in the training yard. Thrak hit the ground hard, the wind knocked out of him. Grasha followed him down, getting behind him and wrapping her arm around his throat in a chokehold. The war chief thrashed, trying to dislodge her, but she held on with desperate strength. Seconds passed, feeling like hours. Thrak's movements grew weaker, more sluggish. "Yield," Grasha gasped out. "Yield and I will let you go. There has been enough violence between our peoples. Do not add to it." For a moment, Vincent thought Thrak would pass out before admitting defeat. Then, with clear reluctance, the war chief tapped his hand against the ground 3 times. The traditional sign of surrender. Grasha released him immediately and stumbled backward, nearly collapsing. Vincent rushed forward to steady her, supporting her weight as she gasped for breath. Thrak climbed slowly to his feet, rubbing his throat and glaring at them both with a mixture of respect and resentment. "You fight well, girl," he admitted grudgingly. "Better than I expected. My mother trained me. She said a warrior fights with both body and mind." "Your mother was right, curse her wisdom." Thrak retrieved his armor and weapons from his warriors. "By the old laws, you have won your freedom. The challenge is satisfied. I will not pursue you further. And Vincent, you will leave him in peace. He is nothing to me. A human farmer on the edge of nowhere. But you, Grasha, are dead to the Stone Fang clan. If you return to our territory, you will be killed on sight. This is the price of your victory." Grasha nodded, accepting the terms. "I understand. Tell my clan sisters I will miss them, but I could not be who they needed me to be. I will tell them you died with honor, which is kinder than the truth." Thrak turned to his warriors. "Mount up. We return to clan lands." The orcs obeyed, swinging into their saddles with practiced ease. Thrak paused before mounting his own horse, looking back at Grasha and Vincent one final time. "You choose a hard path, girl. The world has no love for those who exist between two peoples. But perhaps you are strong enough to forge your own way. Your mother always believed you were special. Maybe she was right." With that, the war chief mounted his horse and led his warriors away. Vincent and Grasha stood together in the yard, watching until the orcs disappeared into the forest. Only then did Grasha allow herself to collapse, her legs giving out beneath her. Vincent caught her, lowering her gently to the ground. "You magnificent, terrifying, brilliant idiot," he said, his voice shaking. "You could have been killed. But I was not. I won." Grasha laughed weakly. "I actually won. You did. You were amazing. But next time you decide to challenge a war chief twice your size, maybe give me some warning. There will not be a next time. That is the point." She looked up at him, her amber eyes bright with unshed tears. "I am free, Vincent, truly free. The clan cannot claim me anymore. I can go anywhere, be anyone." "Where will you go?" The question came out smaller than he intended. Grasha reached up to touch his face, her calloused palm gentle against his cheek. "That depends. Is the offer to stay still open? Or was that only for 3 days? Vincent's breath caught in his throat. "You want to stay? Here on the farm, if you will have me. I know it is complicated and dangerous. Your neighbors will not understand, but I—" She hesitated, vulnerability written across her features. "I do not want to leave. These 3 days have been the happiest I can remember. You make me feel like I can be myself, not a warrior or a clan member, just Grasha. That is a rare gift. You can stay as long as you want. Forever, if that is your wish." Vincent helped her to her feet, supporting her weight as they walked slowly back to the house. "We will figure out the rest as we go. Your neighbors, let me worry about the neighbors. This is my land, my home. I will not let anyone drive you away." They made it inside, and Vincent settled Grasha on the bed despite her protests that she was fine. He checked her injuries from the fight, relieved to find nothing more serious than bruises and scrapes. The wound on her ribs had held, his stitching and bandaging proving equal to the strain. He made her tea with honey and herbs for pain, and she drank it gratefully. "Rest now," he ordered. "You have earned it." "What will you do?" "Stand guard like always. Someone needs to keep watch." Grasha caught his hand as he started to rise. "Vincent, thank you for everything. For giving me a place to belong. You are welcome. Now sleep. We can talk more later." She drifted off within minutes, exhausted by the fight and the emotional toll of confronting her past. Vincent sat beside the bed, watching over her as she slept. His mind raced with thoughts of the future, of all the challenges they would face. A human and an orc trying to build a life together in a world that hated such unions. It would not be easy. There would be difficulties and dangers ahead, prejudice to overcome, battles to fight both literal and metaphorical. But as he looked at Grasha's sleeping face, peaceful despite everything she had endured, Vincent knew he had made the right choice. She belonged here on this farm with him. Together they would build something new, something that transcended the old hatreds and fears. It was a small start, just two people choosing to see past differences to the shared humanity beneath. But perhaps that was how all great changes began. With one small act of kindness, one decision to reach across the divide. The storm that had been threatening all day finally broke in the late afternoon, rain drumming on the roof and turning the world outside gray and soft. Vincent moved about the house quietly, preparing soup for dinner and tending the fire. When Grasha woke at dusk, she found him sitting by the window, staring out at the rain. "Thinking deep thoughts?" she asked, her voice rough from sleep. "Thinking about the future, about how we make this work." "And what conclusions have you reached?" Vincent turned to face her, his expression serious. "We need to be smart about this. You cannot be seen during the day, not yet. Maybe eventually when people get used to the idea, but for now it is too dangerous. You will need to stay in the house or barn out of sight, hiding like a criminal, staying safe like someone with sense. There is a difference." Grasha sat up, wincing at her sore muscles. "What about supplies? If you suddenly start buying twice as much food, people will notice." "I will say I am laying in stores for winter, and I can expand the garden, hunt more. We will manage." "What happens when your neighbors come calling, as that man Garrett did? I cannot hide in the root cellar every time someone rides up. We will work out a signal. A bell I can ring that means danger is coming. You will have time to hide." Vincent came to sit beside her on the bed. "I know it is not perfect, Grasha. I know it means living in shadows for a while, but it is better than the alternative." "Which is?" "You trying to make it to the Southern Territories alone without supplies or support, or me going back to my lonely existence, pretending I never met you and never felt." He trailed off, uncertain how to finish. "Never felt what?" Grasha prompted softly. Vincent met her eyes, seeing his own feelings reflected there. "Never felt like maybe I found something worth taking risks for. Someone who makes me think about futures instead of just surviving day to day." "Vincent, Grasha struggled for words. "We have known each other less than 4 days. How can we know what this is? It could just be proximity and gratitude. It could be, or it could be something real. We will not know unless we give it time to grow. In my clan, there are stories about humans and orcs who fell in love. They all end badly, Vincent, always. The lovers are driven apart by their peoples, or killed for daring to cross the divide. It is not a hopeful tradition. Then we will write a new story, one with a better ending." Grasha laughed despite herself. "You are either the bravest man I have ever met or the most foolish." "Cannot I be both?" "I suppose you can." She reached out to take his hand, lacing her thick fingers through his. If we do this, if we try to build something together, we have to be honest with each other about everything. No secrets, no hiding our true feelings. Agreed. So let me start with honesty. I care about you, Grasha. More than is probably wise given how little time we have spent together. But there it is. I care about you, and I want you to stay not just for 3 days or 3 weeks, but as long as you are willing. I care about you too, she admitted. You are kind and brave, and you see me as a person, not a monster. That is intoxicating for someone who has spent her whole life being treated as a threat. They sat together in the gathering darkness, hands clasped, the sound of rain a gentle backdrop to their quiet conversation. Vincent knew they had much to figure out, many obstacles to overcome. But in that moment, he felt nothing but contentment. For the first time since leaving the army, he had a sense of purpose that went beyond mere survival. He had someone to protect, someone to build a future with. Over the following days, they settled into a routine that worked for both of them. Grasha stayed inside during daylight hours, reading Vincent's books and helping with household tasks. She proved to be a talented cook, once Vincent showed her how his stove worked, and her herbal knowledge complemented his own. She taught him orc recipes that worked with ingredients from his garden, and he showed her human dishes from different regions. In the evenings, when darkness provided cover, Grasha would venture outside to help with farm work. She was stronger than Vincent, capable of hauling heavy loads and breaking stubborn soil with ease. Together, they expanded the garden significantly, planting enough vegetables to feed them both through the coming winter. They worked side by side, developing an easy partnership born of shared labor. Nights were spent talking by the fire, sharing stories of their pasts and dreams for their futures. Vincent learned about orc culture from someone who had lived it, gaining understanding that years of fighting had never provided. Grasha learned about human customs and the wider world beyond her clan's territory. They taught each other words in their respective languages, laughing at pronunciation mistakes and the occasional vulgar phrase that slipped through. 2 weeks after the confrontation with the war chief, Vincent woke to find Grasha already up and preparing breakfast. She hummed as she worked, an orc melody he did not recognize but found pleasant. He watched from the doorway for a moment, struck by how natural it felt to have her in his home. She had become part of his daily life so seamlessly that he struggled to remember what mornings had been like before her. "Good morning," he said, announcing his presence. Grasha turned with a smile that made his heart skip. "Good morning. I made porridge with those berries you picked yesterday. Come eat." They sat together at the table that had once been meant for one. Vincent noticed that Grasha seemed particularly cheerful this morning, almost excited about something. "What is it?" he asked. "You look like you have a secret." "Not a secret exactly, more of a surprise." She set down her spoon and met his eyes. "I have been thinking about what you said, about writing a new story, and I realized something important." "What is that?" "In all the old tales, the lovers try to hide their relationship, to keep it secret from their peoples. And that secrecy is what dooms them, because fear and isolation breed tragedy. But what if we did the opposite?" Vincent felt a chill of apprehension. "What are you suggesting?" "I think we should tell your neighbors about me, not hide anymore, but face their reactions head on. Show them that an orc and a human can live together peacefully." "Grasha, that is incredibly dangerous. You saw how Garrett reacted to just the possibility of an orc in the area. If they know you are here, they will what? Burn the farm, kill us both." "Those things might happen whether we hide or not. At least if we are open about it, we control the narrative. We can show them there is nothing to fear. Or we could get killed and prove nothing except that old prejudices die hard. Maybe. But I am tired of hiding, Vincent. I did not leave my clan just to spend the rest of my life locked in a house, too afraid to be seen. That is not living, it is just existing. Vincent wanted to argue, to list all the reasons why her plan was dangerous and foolish. But he saw the determination in her eyes and recognized it from the day she challenged Thrak. When Grasha decided something, she committed fully, consequences be damned. If we do this, we do it carefully, he said finally. We start with just a few people, ones who might be more sympathetic. We do not announce it to the whole territory at once. Who would you start with? Vincent considered the question. There is a family about an hour south of here, the Reynoldses. Marcus Reynolds is a former soldier like me, served in a different unit, but we crossed paths a few times. He is a thinking man, not quick to judge, and his wife Sarah is known for her kindness. If anyone might listen, it would be them. When do we go? We do not go anywhere. I will visit them alone first, feel out the situation. If they seem receptive, I will tell them about you. If not, we maintain the secret a while longer. Grasha looked disappointed but nodded. That is reasonable. When will you go? Today, while the weather holds. The sooner we start this process, the sooner we know where we stand. He set out after breakfast, riding his mare Belle south along the rough trail that connected the scattered homesteads. The journey gave him plenty of time to rehearse what he would say, though he doubted any amount of preparation would make this conversation easy. How did you tell former comrades that you had an orc living in your house, and not just living there, but sharing your life in ways that transcended simple hospitality? Marcus Reynolds was working in his field when Vincent arrived, his 2 young sons helping to pull weeds. He looked up at the sound of hoofbeats and waved Vincent over with a welcoming smile. Zarrow, this is a surprise. What brings you south? Need to talk to you about something important. Somewhere private if you have a moment. Marcus's expression turned serious. He sent his boys to fetch water and led Vincent to the shade of a large oak tree at the edge of his property. What is this about? Marcus asked. Vincent took a deep breath. You remember the reports a couple weeks back about an orc in the area? The one Garrett Stone was so worked up about. I remember. They never found anything, figured the orc moved on or the sighting was mistaken. Why? The sighting was not mistaken. The orc is real and she is currently living on my farm. Marcus stared at him in stunned silence for several heartbeats. Her name is Grasha. She is an exile from her clan, fled because she refused to participate in a raid on a human village. She showed up wounded and exhausted on my doorstep, and Vincent struggled for words. I could not turn her away. I treated her wounds and offered her shelter, and she stayed. Zarrow, do you have any idea how dangerous this is? If people find out, I know. Believe me, I know. But Marcus, she is not a monster. She is just a person trying to live according to her principles, same as you or me. She chose exile over committing atrocities. That takes courage. Maybe so, but people are not going to see it that way. They are going to see an orc on a human farm and assume the worst. Which is why I am coming to you first. You are a reasonable man, someone who thinks before reacting. I need allies in this, Marcus. People who will at least listen before passing judgment. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, clearly torn. What exactly are you asking me to do? Come meet her, talk to her. See for yourself that she is not a threat. Then, if you are willing, help me convince others that peaceful coexistence is possible. And if I refuse, if I say this is too dangerous and you should send her away, Vincent met his old comrade's eyes steadily. Then I will thank you for hearing me out and return home. But I will not send Grasha away. She stays, regardless of what anyone else thinks. You care for her. It was not a question. I do. More than I probably should, but there it is. She matters to me. Marcus let out a long breath. You are asking a lot, Zarrow. My family lives here too. If this goes wrong, we all suffer the consequences. I know. And I will not blame you if you say no, but I had to try. Because if people like us, people who fought in the war and know the cost of violence, cannot move past old hatreds, then what hope is there for anyone? They stood in silence for a long moment, Marcus clearly wrestling with his decision. Finally, he nodded slowly. I will come meet her, but I am not making any promises beyond that. If I think she is a danger, I will say so. That is all I ask. Thank you, Marcus. They arranged for Marcus to visit Vincent's farm the following day. Vincent rode home feeling both relieved and anxious. He had taken the first step, but the outcome was far from certain. Everything depended on how well the meeting went. Grasha was waiting when he returned, pacing the house nervously. What did he say? He is coming tomorrow to meet you. No promises beyond that, but he is willing to listen. That is more than I expected, honestly. Grasha resumed pacing. What should I do? How should I act? Be yourself. That is all you can do. He is a good man, Grasha. If anyone can see past the surface to who you really are, it is Marcus. What if he cannot? What if he looks at me and sees only an enemy? Vincent crossed to her and caught her hands, stopping her restless movement. Then we deal with it and move on. But I do not think that will happen. Have faith. The next day seemed to drag on forever. Grasha changed clothes 3 times, trying to find something that looked non-threatening but not submissive. She settled on a simple tunic and pants, practical but clean. Vincent tried to focus on his usual chores, but found himself constantly checking the road for signs of Marcus's approach. When Marcus finally arrived in the early afternoon, Vincent met him in the yard. The former soldier looked tense but determined. Vincent led him inside where Grasha waited by the table, standing straight but with her hands visibly empty. Marcus Reynolds, this is Grasha. Grasha, Marcus. For a long moment, neither orc nor human moved. Marcus studied Grasha with the assessing eye of a soldier, noting her build, her scars, the way she carried herself. Grasha endured the scrutiny without flinching, meeting his gaze directly but without challenge. Vincent says you refuse to raid a human village, Marcus said finally. That you chose exile over following that order. That is correct, Grasha replied carefully. I could not justify attacking the defenseless, regardless of what my war chief commanded. Why? Humans and orcs have been at war for generations. Why would you care about human lives? Because my mother taught me that all lives have value. She believed that the cycle of violence between our peoples serves no one but those in power who profit from fear and hate. I was raised to think for myself, to question orders that contradicted my principles. Marcus absorbed this, his expression unreadable. You speak our language well. My mother learned it from a human trader when she was young. She taught me, believing that understanding between peoples begins with communication. Your mother sounds like she was wise. She was. I wish you could have met her. The tension in the room eased slightly. Marcus moved to sit at the table, and after a moment's hesitation, Grasha sat across from him. Vincent remained standing, ready to intervene if needed, but hoping it would not come to that. What are your intentions here? Marcus asked. Why stay on Vincent's farm instead of traveling to the southern territories? Grasha glanced at Vincent before answering. Honestly, because this is the first place I have felt safe and welcome since leaving my clan. Vincent offered me not just shelter but acceptance. The chance to be myself without judgment or fear. That is rare, perhaps rarer than gold. And you, Zarrow, Marcus turned his attention to Vincent. What are your intentions? Because I am getting the sense this is more than simple hospitality. Vincent felt his face heat but answered honestly. I care about her. I am not going to apologize for that or pretend otherwise. We are building something here, Marcus. Something that matters. A relationship between human and orc. You understand how most people will react to that. I do. But I also understand that nothing changes if good people do not take a stand. You and I, we fought in that war. We saw the cost of hatred. Do you really want that to continue indefinitely? Or are you willing to consider that maybe there is another way? Marcus was quiet for a long time, his gaze moving between Vincent and Grasha. When he finally spoke, his voice was thoughtful rather than judgmental. I cannot say I fully understand this, and I cannot speak for others, but I can say that I do not sense any threat from Grasha. She seems genuine in her desire for peace. He looked directly at the orc woman. I am willing to get to know you better before making any final judgments. That is the best I can offer right now. Relief flooded through Vincent. It was not a complete victory, but it was progress. Thank you, Marcus. That means more than you know. Do not thank me yet. Others will not be nearly as accepting. Garrett Stone particularly is going to be a problem. We will deal with challenges as they arise. For now, this is enough. Marcus stayed for another hour, talking with both of them about practical matters and slowly, tentatively building rapport with Grasha. When he finally left, he shook Vincent's hand and even after a moment's hesitation, nodded respectfully to Grasha. I will talk to Sarah, he promised. See if she might be willing to meet Grasha as well. More allies are better. After Marcus left, Grasha collapsed into a chair as if her strings had been cut. That was the most nerve-wracking thing I have ever done, and I fought a war chief bare-handed. Vincent laughed, feeling giddy with relief. You did wonderfully. Marcus is not an easy man to impress, but I could tell he respected you. One person out of dozens. It is a start, I suppose. It is more than a start. It is proof that hearts and minds can be changed. That is everything. Over the following weeks, Marcus proved true to his word. He brought Sarah to meet Grasha, and the two women bonded over shared interest in herbs and healing. Sarah was less guarded than her husband, more open to the idea of friendship across species lines. She began visiting regularly, bringing small gifts and news from other farms. Through Sarah, word began to spread carefully through the community. Not announced publicly, but shared quietly among those deemed sympathetic. Reactions were mixed. Some refused to believe an orc could be anything but dangerous. Others were curious but cautious. A few, mostly other women, expressed interest in meeting Grasha themselves. Vincent and Grasha settled into a life that felt increasingly normal despite its unusual nature. The farm prospered under their combined efforts, yielding better harvests than Vincent had managed alone. Grasha's knowledge of plants and weather patterns proved invaluable. In turn, Vincent taught her to read and write more fluently, and they spent evenings working through his books together. The first real test came 2 months after Marcus's initial visit. Vincent was in town buying supplies when he encountered Garrett Stone outside the general store. The older man's expression was thunderous. I hear you are harboring an orc on your land, Zarrow. Tell me that is not true. Vincent considered lying but rejected the impulse. They had committed to this path. Dishonesty would only make things worse. It is true. Her name is Grasha and she is under my protection. Your protection? Garrett's voice rose, drawing attention from passers-by. You dare to protect an orc after what they did to my daughter. I dare to protect someone who refused to perpetuate the cycle of violence that took your daughter. Grasha is not your enemy, Garrett. She left her clan rather than attack innocents. She is an orc. That makes her my enemy. No, hatred makes you enemies. Grasha wants only to live in peace. She threatens no one. I do not believe that for a second. She is probably scouting the area, feeding information back to her clan. Garrett's face had gone red with anger. I will not stand for this, Zarrow. Either you send her away, or we will come and drive her out ourselves. A crowd had gathered now, townsfolk watching the confrontation with varying expressions of interest and alarm. Vincent kept his voice calm, aware that how he handled this moment would determine much. Garrett, I understand your pain. Truly I do. But Grasha is not responsible for your daughter's death. Punishing her accomplishes nothing except adding more grief to the world. Is that really what you want? I want justice. No, you want revenge. There is a difference. Justice would be holding accountable the orcs who actually committed the attack. Revenge is striking at any convenient target to ease your pain. Do not mistake one for the other. Some in the crowd murmured agreement, while others looked angry. Vincent pressed his advantage before opposition could solidify. How many of you have lost people to this endless war? How many funerals have we attended? How many graves have we dug? And what has it accomplished? The fighting continues, the hatred grows, and good people on both sides keep dying. When does it end? When every last orc is dead or driven from our lands, someone shouted. And then what? We find some other enemy to hate. The problem is not orcs, it is hatred itself. It is the refusal to see our enemies as people who might have their own reasons, their own suffering. Grasha showed me that. She chose peace even when it cost her everything. That takes more courage than any battle. You have gone soft, Zarrow, Garrett said with disgust. That orc has twisted your thinking. No, she has opened my eyes. And if you would take the time to meet her, to actually talk with her instead of just hating what she represents, maybe she could open yours too. I will never break bread with an orc. Then I feel sorry for you, Garrett. I truly do. Because that hatred is going to eat you alive from the inside until there is nothing left but bitterness. Vincent gathered his supplies and left town, aware that he had probably made things worse in the short term. But some things needed to be said, even if they were not well received. The ride home gave him time to worry about potential retaliation. Garrett had support among the more hot-headed members of the community. It was entirely possible they would form a mob and come for Grasha. He arrived home to find Marcus Reynolds's horse tied outside the house. Inside, Marcus sat with Grasha, both looking worried. I heard about the confrontation in town, Marcus said without preamble. Word travels fast. Is it bad? It is not good. Garrett is working people up, talking about driving the orc out by force if necessary. You need to be prepared for trouble. Vincent's jaw tightened. Let them come. I will not hand Grasha over to a mob. Vincent, you cannot fight the whole town, Grasha said quietly. Maybe I should leave. Go south like I originally planned. No, we are past that point now. Running will only convince them they were right to be afraid. He turned to Marcus. How much support does Garrett have? Maybe a dozen men willing to ride with him. But there are also people who think he is going too far. Your speech made an impression on some folks, got them thinking about the cost of continuing the cycle. It is not unanimous by any means. What do we do? Grasha asked. Marcus considered for a moment. We make sure that if Garrett does come, he faces organized opposition rather than just Vincent alone. I will put out word among those sympathetic to your cause. We will be ready to stand with you. You would do that. Vincent felt a surge of gratitude. Marcus, if this goes badly, it could ruin you too. I know. But Sarah and I talked about it, and we agree that some things are worth standing up for. The war took enough from all of us. Maybe it is time we stopped feeding it. Over the next few days, tension ratcheted higher. Vincent and Grasha prepared for the possibility of attack, barricading the house and stockpiling supplies. Marcus was true to his word, gathering allies who were willing to support them. It turned into a test of wills, the community splitting into factions, those who saw Grasha as a threat, those who were willing to give her a chance, and those who simply wanted to avoid getting involved. The confrontation came on a gray morning 4 days after the incident in town. Vincent spotted riders approaching, counted a dozen men with Garrett Stone at their head. But before they reached the farm, another group of riders emerged from a different direction, Marcus leading 6 other farmers. The two groups met in the road before Vincent's property line. Vincent and Grasha watched from the porch, tense and ready for violence. But Marcus positioned his people between Garrett's group and the farm, forcing a confrontation before anyone could reach the house. "That is far enough, Garrett," Marcus called out. "What happens here is going to set the tone for this whole community. Make sure you want to live with the consequences. Get out of my way, Reynolds. That orc has to go. She has committed no crime. She threatens no one. What you are proposing is murder, plain and simple." "It is justice for my daughter. Your daughter was killed by orc raiders. This particular orc refused to participate in raids. Those are not the same thing, and you know it." The two groups faced off in the road, neither willing to back down. Vincent made a decision. He stepped off the porch and walked out to join the standoff, Grasha reluctantly following behind him. "You want to drive Grasha away," Vincent called out. "Then you will have to go through me first. I will not stand aside while you harm someone under my protection." "Same goes for us," Marcus added, and his supporters nodded agreement. Garrett looked around at the opposing force, clearly calculating his chances. He had expected to face Vincent alone, not nearly equal numbers. The math was no longer in his favor. "This is not over," Garrett warned. "That orc is a danger to everyone here. The only danger is from people who refuse to move past old hatreds," Vincent replied. "Grasha left her clan because she rejected violence. She has been living peacefully on my land for months now without causing any problems. How long does she have to demonstrate good intentions before you accept she is not a threat? Never, because she is an orc and orcs cannot be trusted." Grasha stepped forward then, drawing all eyes. When she spoke, her voice was clear and strong. "You are right that I am an orc. That is not something I can change or that I would want to change. But being an orc does not make me your enemy unless you decide it does. I came to this land seeking peace, nothing more. I have worked beside Vincent to build and grow, not to destroy. I have learned about your people, your customs, your stories, and I have found more in common than I expected." She paused, looking directly at Garrett. "I am sorry for your loss, truly. No parent should have to bury a child, but killing me will not bring your daughter back. It will only add another death to the long list of senseless violence. Is that truly what she would have wanted? For her death to inspire more death? You do not get to speak about my daughter." Garrett's voice cracked with emotion. "You are right. I did not know her. But I know grief, because I lost my mother too. And I know that she would be disappointed if I used my pain as justification for causing pain to others. Maybe your daughter would feel the same." The words hung in the air. Garrett stared at Grasha with an expression that cycled between rage and something that might have been recognition. The men behind him shifted uncomfortably, some of their certainty visibly wavering. "This is wrong," Garrett said, but his voice had lost its fire. "Everything about this is wrong." "Maybe," Vincent agreed. "Or maybe it is the first right thing that has happened in years, a chance to break the cycle instead of perpetuating it, a chance to choose peace over war." Garrett looked at his followers, then at Marcus's group, finally at Vincent and Grasha standing together. Whatever he saw seemed to deflate something inside him. The anger bled out, leaving only exhausted grief. "I cannot do this," he said quietly. "I cannot let it go, but I cannot do this either." He turned his horse around. "Keep your orc, Zarrow, but do not expect me to accept her. That is beyond me." He rode away, his followers trailing behind with varying degrees of reluctance. Marcus and his people remained until the others were well gone, then approached Vincent and Grasha. "That was close," Marcus said. "Too close." "But we held," Vincent replied. "Thank you, all of you. We could not have done this without your support." Sarah Reynolds had been among Marcus's group. She dismounted and approached Grasha directly. "That was a brave thing you said, about grief and choice. I think it reached him, at least a little." "I hope so. I meant every word." The supporters dispersed, each returning to their own farms with promises to continue standing together if needed. Vincent and Grasha were left alone again. The crisis passed, but both aware of how fragile the peace remained. "Come on," Vincent said, taking Grasha's hand. "Let us go inside. I think we have earned some quiet." That night, they sat by the fire as they had so many evenings before. But something had shifted between them, crystallized by the day's events. They had faced down a mob together and won, not through violence but through solidarity and moral conviction. The experience had forged a bond deeper than simple affection. "I was terrified today," Grasha admitted. "Not for myself, but for you. If fighting had broken out, you could have been killed defending me." "Same fear I had for you. Funny how that works." "Vincent, why are you doing this? Really? You could have let me go that first night. You could have sent me away at any point before things got complicated. Why risk everything for an orc you barely know?" Vincent set down his cup and turned to face her fully. "Because from the first moment I saw you in the barn doorway, I knew you were important. Because every conversation we have had, every meal we have shared, every time you laugh at one of my terrible jokes, I am more certain that meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because I love you, Grasha. I am in love with you, and I do not care if that is inconvenient or complicated or forbidden. It is the truest thing I have ever felt." Grasha's eyes widened, shimmering with tears. "You love me. I do. I love your courage and your principles, and the way you hum while cooking. I love how you look at the stars like you are seeing them for the first time every night. I love that you refuse to compromise who you are even when it costs you everything. I love you, and I want to build a life with you, whatever that looks like. Vincent Zarrow, you impossible, wonderful human." Grasha reached out to cup his face with both hands. "I love you too. I have been falling for you since you kept watch that first night so I could finally sleep safely. Since you bandaged my wounds and fed me and treated me like a person instead of a monster. I love you more than I thought possible." They came together in a kiss that was tender and fierce all at once, a claiming and a promise. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless and smiling. "So what happens now?" Grasha asked. "Now we keep doing what we have been doing, building our life, growing our farm, changing hearts and minds one person at a time. Together." "Together," Grasha echoed. "I like the sound of that." The seasons turned. Summer gave way to autumn, and the harvest was the best Vincent's farm had ever produced. More people came to meet Grasha, drawn by curiosity or genuine desire for understanding. Not everyone was convinced, but the violent opposition faded as months passed without incident. Grasha proved herself through action, helping neighbors during difficult times, sharing her knowledge of healing herbs, working beside humans without incident or conflict. By winter, Grasha's presence on Vincent's farm had become accepted, if not universally embraced, by the surrounding community. She and Vincent settled into the comfortable rhythm of a long-term partnership, weathering storms both literal and metaphorical with united strength. One snowy evening, as they sat by the fire, Vincent working on repairing a harness while Grasha read aloud from a book of poetry, he looked up and realized how completely his life had changed. A year ago, he had been alone, building a solitary existence far from other people. Now his house felt like a home, filled with warmth and laughter and love. "What are you smiling about?" Grasha asked, noticing his expression. "Just thinking about how lucky I am, how lucky we both are." "To have found each other, you mean?" "That, and to have been brave enough to take the risk. To choose hope over fear." Grasha set down her book and moved to sit beside him. "Do you have any regrets about how things have turned out?" "Not a single one. Do you?" "No, though I sometimes wonder what my mother would think, if she would be proud or disappointed that I left the clan." "She would be proud. You became exactly who she raised you to be, someone who thinks for herself and builds bridges instead of walls. That is a powerful legacy." "I wish you could have met her." "Me too. But I know her through you, through the values she instilled and the wisdom she shared." "That is its own kind of meeting." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the wind outside and the crackle of the fire. Eventually, Vincent stirred, reaching into his pocket for something he had been carrying for weeks, waiting for the right moment. "Grasha, I have something for you." He held out a ring he had made himself, carved from wood and polished until it gleamed. It was simple but beautiful, sized to fit her thicker fingers. In human custom, when two people want to commit their lives to each other, they exchange rings as a symbol of their bond. "I know we cannot have a traditional wedding, that no one would recognize or bless our union. But I want you to have this anyway as a promise that I am yours and you are mine, for as long as we both shall live." Grasha took the ring with shaking hands, examining it with wonder. "Vincent, it is beautiful. Will you marry me, Grasha, in our own way, by our own terms? Will you be my wife?" "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and she pulled him into a kiss that tasted of joy and promise and forever. When they pulled apart, both had tears streaming down their faces. "I made one for myself too," Vincent admitted, producing a second ring. "If you would do the honors." Grasha took his ring and slid it onto his finger, her touch gentle despite her strength. "I, Grasha of no clan, take you, Vincent Zarrow, as my husband. I promise to stand beside you through all storms, to build with you instead of tearing down, to love you with every breath I take. And I, Vincent Zarrow, take you, Grasha, as my wife. I promise to protect and cherish you, to respect your strength and independence, to build a life together that honors both our peoples and transcends old divisions. I love you now and always." They sealed their vows with another kiss, and though no priest blessed them and no community witnessed their union, it felt no less sacred. They had chosen each other freely, against all odds and opposition, and that choice mattered more than any official sanction. The winter passed peacefully. Vincent and Grasha lived as husband and wife in all but legal recognition, their bond deepening with each shared day. They made plans for expanding the farm in spring, talked about the possibility of building a larger house, dreamed together about the future they were creating. Word of their marriage spread through the community, generating mixed reactions. Some were scandalized, others cautiously accepting. Marcus and Sarah threw a small celebration in their honor, inviting those sympathetic to the union. It was a modest gathering, nothing like a traditional wedding feast, but it meant everything to have friends who supported their choice. Garrett Stone never softened toward Grasha, but he stopped actively opposing her presence. It was a cold peace, but peace nonetheless. Other families followed his example, neither accepting nor attacking, simply coexisting in wary neutrality. It was not perfect, but it was progress. Spring arrived with new growth and fresh possibilities. Grasha proved to have a gift for animal husbandry, and under her care, Vincent's small herd expanded. She also began teaching interested humans about orc agricultural techniques, sharing knowledge that had been hoarded for generations. Some of the younger people in the community, those without the scarring memories of the worst of the wars, proved especially receptive. One warm afternoon in late spring, Vincent came in from the fields to find Grasha standing in the doorway with a strange expression on her face. "What is it?" he asked, immediately concerned. "Are you all right?" "I am fine. Better than fine, actually." She took his hand and placed it on her belly. "Vincent, I am pregnant. We are going to have a baby." Time seemed to stop. Vincent stared at her, processing the information. A baby. Their baby. Half human, half orc, a living symbol of the bridge they had been trying to build. "Are you sure?" "I am sure. About 2 months along, I think." Vincent pulled her into his arms, holding her tight as emotions crashed over him. Joy, fear, hope, worry, all tangled together. "This is going to change everything." "I know. Are you happy?" "I am terrified and ecstatic in equal measure. But yes, I am happy. So incredibly happy." They held each other in the doorway, the spring sun warm on their backs and the future stretching before them full of promise and uncertainty. Their child would face challenges neither of them could fully predict, would have to forge an identity between two worlds that had been at war for generations. But their child would also be raised in love, taught to value both their heritages, given the tools to build more bridges. News of Grasha's pregnancy divided the community even further. Some saw it as an abomination, others as hope for a new generation that transcended old hatreds. Vincent and Grasha weathered the reactions with the same determination they had shown from the beginning, refusing to be ashamed of the life they were creating together. Sarah Reynolds became Grasha's closest friend and confidant during the pregnancy, sharing wisdom from her own experiences and helping prepare for the birth. Marcus built a cradle for the baby, his gift, a quiet statement of support that meant everything. Other small gestures of acceptance followed. A blanket from one family, carved toys from another, offers of help once the child arrived. As Grasha's belly grew, so did cautious optimism about the future. If a human and an orc could build a life together, could raise a child together, what other possibilities might exist? The question hung in the air, prompting people to reconsider assumptions they had held for generations. The baby came in early autumn, during a thunderstorm that rattled the windows and shook the house. Vincent paced frantically while Sarah and 2 other women attended Grasha. The hours dragged on, every cry from the bedroom making him flinch. He had faced enemy charges with more calm than he felt waiting for his child to be born. Finally, as dawn broke and the storm passed, a new sound filled the house. A baby's first cry. Vincent bolted for the bedroom, finding Grasha exhausted but glowing with joy, a small bundle cradled in her arms. "Meet your daughter," she said softly. Vincent approached with trembling steps, looking down at the tiny face that was neither fully orc nor fully human but perfectly herself. She had green-tinged skin a shade lighter than Grasha's, small bumps where tusks would eventually grow, and bright eyes that seemed to see everything. "She is perfect," Vincent whispered. "Absolutely perfect. We need to name her," Grasha said. "Something that honors both our peoples." They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy, considering options from both human and orc traditions. In the end, they chose Alara, a name that existed in both cultures with slightly different meanings. In human tongue it meant star, in orcish brave heart. "Alara Zarrow," Vincent said, testing how it sounded. "Welcome to the world, little one. You are going to do amazing things." Word of Alara's birth spread quickly. Some people made their disgust clear, refusing to acknowledge the child's existence. But others, more than Vincent had dared hope, came to visit and bring gifts. They wanted to see this child who represented something new, a future that had not existed before. Marcus and Sarah were among the first visitors, bringing food and supplies and boundless enthusiasm. Sarah held baby Alara with practiced ease, cooing over her the same way she had cooed over her own children. "She is beautiful," Sarah declared, "and she is going to grow up strong and smart with you two as parents." "I hope so," Grasha said. "I want her to have a better world than we did. One where she does not have to choose between her mother's people and her father's." "Then we will build that world," Marcus said firmly. "Starting here with this community, we will make it safe for her to be herself." It was a promise that would take years to fulfill, but it was a promise they all committed to. Slowly, painstakingly, the community around Vincent's farm began to change. Not everyone embraced the new reality, but enough did to make a difference. Children who grew up playing with Alara learned that orcs were not monsters but people. Adults who watched Vincent and Grasha work together, raise their daughter together, began to question whether the old hatreds needed to continue. The years passed in a blur of domestic life. Alara grew from infant to toddler to a bright young girl who asked endless questions and showed signs of inheriting both her mother's strength and her father's thoughtfulness. Vincent and Grasha's farm prospered, becoming a gathering place for those interested in building bridges between peoples. Other mixed families began to form, carefully and quietly at first, but with growing confidence as they saw Alara thriving. The change was slow, measured in generations rather than months, but it was real. The community that had almost driven Grasha away now included her daughter in their children's games, invited the family to celebrations, slowly learned to see past surface differences to shared humanity. On Alara's 5th birthday, Vincent stood with Grasha watching their daughter play with a group of human and orc children who had gathered for the celebration. The orcs were children of exiles like Grasha, families who had followed her example and left clans that demanded violence. The humans were from local families who had chosen acceptance over hatred. Together, the children played without seeing differences, without carrying the burdens of past conflicts. "Look at them," Grasha said softly. "This is what my mother dreamed of, what we have fought for." "It is not perfect yet," Vincent cautioned. "There is still prejudice, still people who will never accept what we have built here. But it is better than it was. And our daughter will make it better still, her generation and the ones after. We started something, Vincent, something important." He pulled her close, watching their daughter laugh with her friends. "We did. And it all started because you showed up in my barn one night, wounded and exhausted, and I decided to help instead of turning you away. You realized I had not slept in 4 days because I was watching for danger," Grasha remembered with a smile. "You took your turn at watch so I could rest. That was when I knew you were different, that maybe your kind and mine were not so different after all. And you were right. We are not so different, not in the ways that matter. We all want safety, love, a place to belong. We all dream of better futures for our children." They stood together in the autumn sunshine, surrounded by the life they had built against all odds. The farm thrived. Their daughter grew strong and happy. Their community slowly healed old wounds and forged new connections. It was not the ending Vincent had imagined when he bought this land as a discharged soldier seeking peace. It was better, richer, more meaningful than anything he could have planned. That night, after the party ended and Alara was tucked into bed, Vincent and Grasha sat on their porch watching the stars emerge. These quiet moments had become even more precious as their life filled with the happy chaos of raising a child and building community. "You remember what you said that first morning?" Vincent asked. "When you woke up and found I had kept watch all night." "I said you had given me a great gift," Grasha recalled. "And I promised I would not forget your kindness. You have more than repaid any debt you imagined you owed. You have given me a family, a purpose, a reason to believe the world can change for the better. We gave those things to each other. That is how love works. Vincent took her hand, their rings catching the light from the house behind them. 5 years since they had exchanged vows by the fire, and the commitment felt stronger than ever. They had weathered storms, both literal and metaphorical, faced down mobs and prejudice, and the thousand small challenges of building an interspecies marriage. And they had emerged not just intact but stronger, their love tempered and proven through trial. "I love you," Vincent said, as he did every night. "Thank you for trusting me enough to stay." "I love you too," Grasha replied. "Thank you for being worth the trust." They sat in comfortable silence as the night deepened around them, two people from different worlds who had chosen to build a bridge. Behind them, their daughter slept peacefully, dreaming whatever 5-year-olds dream. Ahead of them stretched years of work and love and growth, challenges to face and victories to celebrate. But for now, in this moment, everything was perfect. The farm was prosperous, their family was healthy, their community was changing for the better. They had taken a risk on each other, had chosen hope over fear and love over hatred. And in doing so, they had proven that even the deepest divides could be crossed by those brave enough to take the first step. Vincent leaned his head against Grasha's shoulder, feeling her strength and warmth. She rested her cheek against his hair, her breathing slow and peaceful. Around them, the night sounds of the farm created a familiar symphony. Crickets singing, the gentle lowing of cattle, the rustle of wind through grain fields. These were the sounds of home, of peace, of a life well lived. The story that had started with a wounded orc in a barn doorway had become something neither Vincent nor Grasha could have imagined that first night. It had become a marriage, a family, a community learning to move past generations of conflict. It had become hope made tangible, proof that change was possible when good people chose courage over fear. And as the stars wheeled overhead, ancient and unchanging, two people sat together on a farmhouse porch and dreamed of the future they would continue building together, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one act of love at a time. It was not a grand epic, not a tale that would be sung in great halls, but it was real, and it was theirs, and it was exactly enough. The end came not with dramatic flourish but with quiet contentment. Years had passed since that stormy night when Grasha first arrived. Their daughter had grown, their farm had prospered, their love had deepened. The world was still imperfect, still carried scars from old wounds. But in their corner of it, on a small farm at the edge of the thornwood, two people had built something that mattered. They had built a home. They had built a family. They had built hope. And when historians would later look back on how human-orc relations began to heal, they would trace the change to small moments like these. A soldier who chose compassion over violence, an orc who chose principle over belonging. Two people who looked at each other and saw not an enemy but a possibility. Vincent and Grasha had started something that would outlive them. A legacy measured not in grand battles won or territories conquered, but in the simple act of living together with love and respect. Their daughter would carry that legacy forward, and her children after her, each generation building on the foundation of that first act of kindness in a barn on a stormy night. This was their happily ever after. Not perfect, not easy, but real and hard-won and infinitely precious. They had found each other against all odds, had chosen to build a bridge when the world told them to build walls. And in doing so, they had proven that love was stronger than hatred, that hope was stronger than fear, that two people committed to seeing each other's humanity could change the world, one small decision at a time. As sleep finally claimed them that night, Vincent and Grasha held each other close, grateful for every moment they had been given, ready for whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. They faced the future not with certainty but with confidence, knowing that whatever came, they would face it together. And that, in the end, was everything.